That's the punishment for stealing my dad from me. In the midst of our argument, Jenna grabbed my arm and forcefully dragged me outside. Then she shoved me into a shed that was far from clean. I tried my best to resist, but younger folks just have more strength. I was trapped in the shed. Inside the dark and chilly shed, I started to feel ill. What should I do? How can I get out of here? Though I was panicking, I felt a slight weight in the back pocket of my jeans. Oh yeah, I have this. I quickly searched my pocket. My name is Sophia Johnson. I am 42 years old. I worked as an administrative assistant at a company. The job wasn't too complicated, but it was never boring. I found it fulfilling, and above all, my coworkers were all kind-hearted, which was what I loved about my workplace. It might be rare for someone in the workforce, but I genuinely enjoyed my job every day and didn't find it burdensome. However, there was one thing that concerned me. It was the fact that I wasn't married. Seeing my friends get married and live happily ever after made me feel both envious and a bit sad. Moreover, the thought of living the rest of my life alone was quite daunting. But there were no prospects in sight, and I constantly wondered if any man would ever take an interest in me. Every day I was consumed by thoughts of the future, filled with unease. However, a few years after I started having these thoughts, I finally got married. His name is Robert Johnson. He is 7 years older than me and works at one of our client companies. Robert had recently become the point of contact for the company I worked at, so he visited often. At first, we were both hesitant, but gradually we grew closer and started dating. After a few years of dating, Robert and I were able to tie the knot. I was truly elated. I genuinely hoped from the bottom of my heart that we would build a happy home together. Robert has a 15-year-old child named Jenna. She is his daughter from his previous wife from whom he had divorced. He had been upfront about Jenna while we were dating, and I had met her several times. Jenna is a very reserved girl, and she seems particularly fond of Robert. She was always by his side, glued to him. Seeing Jenna like that warmed my heart. I had a vague hope that as we started living together, Jenna and I would become close. However, I had yet to truly understand Jenna's true nature. After marrying Robert, I moved into the home he shared with Jenna. With the marriage as an opportunity, I quit my job to become a homemaker. I did everything I could to ensure that Robert and Jenna had a comfortable life. I prepared well-balanced meals and kept the house clean and organized. I kept the house tidy. It may seem ordinary, but I believed that it would make their lives more pleasant. However, having a family was much different from living alone. Every little household chore became more challenging. During those times, what comforted me was a cat named Oliver. Oliver had always been at Robert's house. He was not slim, to say the least, and I heard he had a tendency to sneak out. But I believed that, as long as I was always at home, he wouldn't run away. Even though I faced many exhausting days, I always felt soothed by admiring Oliver. Life after marriage had its challenges, but I felt much happier than when I was single. However, there was something that weighed on my mind. I was worried that Jenna might not think highly of me, causing her to ignore me. Even when I tried to initiate conversation, Jenna would look at me with a perplexed expression and continue to ignore me. "Welcome home, Jenna," I would say, but she would only give me a fleeting glance and not respond. I would ask her about her day at school and if she had fun, but she still wouldn't say a word. After petting Oliver for a bit, she would go straight to her room. Despite her constant ignoring, I believed that she just hadn't come to accept me yet. She was at that challenging age of 15. I understood that if her father remarried and suddenly there was a new woman in the house who wasn't her real mother, she would be wary. I had met Jenna a few times before Robert and I got married, but she just couldn't seem to warm up to me. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to get Jenna to accept me, but despite my efforts, she never did. Ignoring me became her default. She began overtly avoiding me, and whenever she was around me, she had a constant look of displeasure on her face. When Robert was home, she would talk a bit, probably to avoid upsetting Robert, whom she adored so much. Still, I thought it was much better than not talking at all. It has been about 4 years since I married Robert. The distance between Jenna and me never seemed to close, and life felt kind of floaty. Even after living together for 3 years, I didn't know Jenna's favorite food or her hobbies. The only thing I knew was that she adored Oliver. I had grown accustomed to Jenna's gaze, which initially felt intimidating. But when Jenna reached high school, she surprisingly started a conversation with me. "Hey," she said. What's up?" I replied, taken aback that Jenna was speaking to me. My voice unintentionally went up a notch. Was she finally opening up to me? What was she gonna say? Various emotions bubbled up, but I silently waited for Jenna's words. However, what she said was completely unexpected. "How long are you gonna stay in this house?" "What?" "I'm asking how long you're planning to stay." "Can you leave soon?" "You're in the way." "Why would you say that?" Obviously, being told out of the blue to leave was a shock. I was puzzled as to why she suddenly said that. Questions swirled in my head, but finding the words was challenging. Then Jenna explained her feelings, shedding light on her past actions. "Look, I love my dad. It was just the two of us, you know? Why did we suddenly have to live with an old woman like you? Acting all motherly. I just can't handle it." "What? I thought if I treated you like you weren't there, you'd break and divorce him." "Was school fun?" Seriously gross. I was bombarded with her hurtful words, leaving me speechless. "In front of Dad, you act all high and mighty. But it's been hard for me, you know? Maybe it's time you realized your worth, old lady." Seeing my despondent face, Jenna seemed satisfied, flashing a smile I had never seen before, and walked away. She had harbored such negative feelings towards me all along. The barrage of hurtful words and the suggestion to reflect on my worth kept echoing in my head. Before I knew it, tears streamed down my face. What was the point of all the effort these past 4 years? I tried so hard to gain Jenna's approval, but in the end, she never accepted me. How should I approach Jenna now? I tried desperately to find an answer, but none came. From that day on, Jenna began hurling insults at me. "Sophia, I've always thought this, but you're really bad at cooking. It's seriously awful." "Oh, really? I'm sorry. It's sad for Dad, you know? There are so many better people than you out there. With Dad's charm, he could remarry in a heartbeat." Jenna would say things like this, but she would put on a facade in front of Robert. "You know, Sophia's cooking is really delicious. Right, Jenna?" "Yeah, it's yummy." It wasn't new, but seeing Jenna's quick switch always left me dumbfounded. "What's wrong, Sophia?" "Sophia is just so happy. I feel happy, yet not happy." Such a complicated emotion that probably no one can understand. "I guess so," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. But Jenna lost all restraint and just kept on with her tirades. Many times I thought about breaking down and confiding in Robert, but I never could take that step. Robert always seemed so busy with his daily work. I just couldn't bring myself to burden him. With my problems, I thought if I just endured, everything would be okay. Even if Jenna said she loved Robert, she might eventually move out and live alone. I saw it as just enduring until then. 5 years later, Jenna went on to college after graduating high school and later got a job at a company near home. Around the same time Jenna started working, Robert began taking business trips. Initially, they were just for a day or two, but gradually the duration increased. It wasn't rare for him to be gone for 2 weeks or even an entire month. A few months after these trips began, Jenna's verbal abuse didn't stop. With Robert gone, it seemed Jenna had no filter. The food was terrible. "Can't you do something about it?" "Say something." Jenna left her unfinished meal and quickly went to Oliver's place. I looked at the leftover food and gently put down my knife and fork. I had endured so much up to this point, but one day I finally reached my breaking point. Endless verbal abuse and a cold attitude every day, treated more like a maid than a mother. There wasn't any particular trigger. While Jenna was hurling insults at me as usual, I finally snapped. "Just get out already. You're so annoying. Hey, you're always telling me I'm a bother and to leave. Enough is enough." Jenna, not used to me talking back, was taken aback. But she immediately retorted with harsh words. "What? Why are you suddenly talking back?" "I seriously can't deal with this. I can't take it anymore. If you can't stand it, why don't you move out? You have a job, you have money, and you do fine on your own. I'm a homemaker, I can't just up and leave." Maybe I hit a nerve because she didn't respond. I could tell she was fuming. Lost your tongue? What happened to all that energy just a moment ago? Just as I was about to get the upper hand, Jenna suddenly grabbed my arm, squeezing painfully tight. Ouch! Even though I protested, Jenna wasn't listening. She forcefully dragged me outside. Hey! She pulled me towards a small storage shed outside. Without hesitation, she pushed me into it. Though I resisted, I was no match for her younger strength. In an instant, I was locked inside the shed. What are you doing? Hey, let me out. Desperately, I banged on the wall, pleading with Jenna to release me from the shed. But Jenna didn't seem to care. I can't just let you out even though you say so. Oh, by the way, I haven't told you, but I've got a trip planned for 3 days. We'll try to survive in that cramped shed. 3 days? Are you serious? Hey, what about Oliver? Oliver? There's an automatic feeder, so he'll be fine. I was stunned by her completely irresponsible comment. You're being so irresponsible. Shut up. Never come out of there again. After yelling, Jenna mockingly said this. That's the punishment for stealing my dad from me. Soon after, Jenna's presence disappeared. Inside the dark, unattractive shed, I felt the chilly air and started feeling sick. What am I gonna do? I can't bear to stay in here for 3 whole days. I started panicking even more, desperately banging on the walls. But it was no use. At that moment, I suddenly felt the weight in my pants pocket. Oh yeah, I have it. I quickly reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. Such a lucky break. I called my nearby friend, Sarah Turner. Oh, hey, Sarah. Sophia, what's up? It's rare for you to call. The thing is, I explained my situation and asked Sarah to come help. In just a few minutes, Sarah arrived. Are you okay? The door swung open, revealing the blinding sunlight and Sarah's face. Even though I'd only been in the shed for a few hours, it felt like days since I'd been outside. I thanked Sarah and she took me to her house. I didn't have my keys, and Robert was away on a business trip. Given all that, Sarah told me I could stay at her place for as long as I needed. When I got out of the shed, I felt that Jenna's presence was gone. She probably already left for her trip. Anyway, the next thing I should do is contact Robert. I sent Robert a message telling him what happened and where I currently was. I couldn't exactly ask him to come back, but deep down, I hoped he would. While chatting with Sarah a few minutes later, I received a call from Robert. Hello? Sophia? Are you okay? Robert, I'm fine. Thanks. Listen, I'm heading home now. I'll come pick you up, so wait at your friend's place a bit longer. Okay? Oh, what about your work? Forget work. Just know I'm on my way. I think it'll take about 3 hours, so hang tight. Robert seemed worried about me and was making the effort to come back. I thanked Robert and hung up. He said he's coming to pick me up. So, can I stay here for another 3 hours or so? Of course. And honestly, you have such a caring husband. Just saying, jealous? Yes, jealous. She was like, I love Dad, right? From what I've heard, she's probably jealous that you married her beloved dad. Is that so? Now that it was mentioned, it did seem like jealousy. But, just because she's family doesn't mean you should hold back. Telling her off when needed is for Jenna's own good, you know? Okay, Sarah's right. No matter how long we've lived together, acting impulsively in anger like I did isn't going to help Jenna. But how can I get through to her? I racked my brain for a solution. As a result, I came up with a somewhat forceful plan. I immediately shared the plan with Sarah. That's a pretty cool idea. Give it a shot. I'll give it my best shot, I replied. Sarah seemed amused and supported the idea. 3 hours later, Robert arrived at Sarah's house and knocked at the door. Are you okay, Sophia? I asked. I'm fine, thank you. But you were at work. You matter more to me than any job, Robert replied. Moreover, Robert apparently decided to take a few days off from work. Is it okay for you to take time off like that? Yeah, they said they'll manage, Robert reassured me. I feel like I need to have a serious talk with Jenna, I said. After that, I explained to Robert in detail what Jenna had done to me up until now and how this situation came about. Robert listened intently and apologized. I'm sorry for not noticing. It's not just your fault. I didn't speak up, and Jenna was doing all this secretly. Still, I should have noticed something was off. I'm truly sorry. A heavy atmosphere lingered, but Sarah broke through it. Why the long face? You're gonna scold Jenna, right? But Sarah's words somehow inspired me. You're right, I said. Afterward, we thanked Sarah and went home. I felt like I might have troubled Robert, but if this could make Jenna's behavior settle down, I'd be glad. When we got home and things calmed down a bit, I told Robert about our plan for Jenna and why I felt the need to go to such lengths. After pondering for a moment, Robert said, well, honestly, considering Jenna's past, it might take something drastic to get through to her. 3 days later, it was the day Jenna would return. Since we didn't know when she'd be back, we left the window closest to the shed open, keeping an eye out for her return. Around 6 p.m., a taxi stopped in front of our house and Jenna stepped out with her luggage. The plan I put into action involved making the shed, where I was supposedly locked up, seem ransacked. The shed seemed ransacked and emitting a rotting smell. Frankly, it's debatable if a human being would pass away in such conditions for 3 days. Moreover, even if the person did pass away, the stench of decay wouldn't arise immediately. However, I bet that Jenna wouldn't know such details. With a slight intention to shock her, I executed my plan. Secretly watching Jenna, I noticed she stopped in front of the shed. From her reaction, it seemed my plan was working. What's that smell? Jenna frowned at the stench wafting from the shed. After pondering for a moment, she suddenly looked alarmed, murmuring something, and forcefully opened the door to the shed. Jenna was choking from the intense odor. However, her expression quickly changed to shock as she observed the inside. What's this? It's been ransacked. We approached the dumbstruck Jenna and spoke up. How was your trip, Sophia? Why? Wait, Dad's here too? Jenna, we need to talk. Robert had the scariest expression I'd ever seen on his face. Seeing Robert's face, Jenna seemed to have understood everything. Jenna sat on the sofa looking downcast. You've done some terrible things to Sophia. To Robert's words, Jenna remained silent. You panicked earlier, thinking that maybe Sophia had died in there. That's not it. What? Then why did she look so panicked in front of the shed? As we waited for Jenna's response, she revealed something unexpected. I thought Oliver was inside. What? Oliver? After all, Oliver used to escape often before. I thought maybe he somehow got inside the shed and couldn't get out. You should have been worried about Sophia after locking her up. What would have happened if I hadn't come back? I forgot about Sophia. I couldn't believe she forgot she locked me up. I was so shocked I couldn't find the words. But Robert was livid at her careless statement. I never thought you'd be like this. I'm truly disappointed. But wait, Jenna tried to justify herself, but Robert sensed it and cut her off. Wait for what? Gonna make excuses? It's just that I felt like Sophia took Dad away from me. You did something that could have had irreparable consequences just because you felt like it. And then you forget about it. I never thought I raised you to be like this. With that, Robert sighed. He seemed to have completely given up on Jenna. Sensing this, Jenna stood up and started defending herself again. Dad, don't say things like that. I just love you so much. If Sophia had just waited quietly for 3 days, I would have let her out. And if Sophia hadn't called her friend, none of this would have happened. Dad didn't have to leave work early or take the day off. This is all your fault. Wouldn't it have been better if you hadn't obviously disliked me? Maybe if you hadn't locked me up, your misdeeds wouldn't have been discovered. You act on your own but shove all the responsibility onto me. What? Oh, by the way, it seems you were worried about Oliver. But didn't you once say that leaving Oliver alone for about 3 days was okay? That's just unthinkable. Do you realize you have a living creature under your care? I thought it would be fine. If you truly cared, leaving him alone for 3 days wouldn't even be an option. And by the way, you don't even know what kind of food Oliver is currently eating, do you? Because Robert and I have been taking care of him. I thought you loved Oliver since we started living together. Now, you only pet him when you feel like it, and ignore him otherwise. It's also contradictory that it's become quite funny. When I said honestly what I was thinking, Jenna blushed with anger. Why do I have to be told that by you? You're a stranger. You're the one who took away my dad, so it's all your fault. Hey, that's enough. Jenna, who couldn't understand what I was saying, snapped even more. But Robert stepped in. You've been spouting nothing but self-centered nonsense. How is it all Sophia's fault? I really can't understand what you're thinking. Daddy, Jenna with tears in her eyes clung to Robert, but Robert coldly looked down at her. Just leave this house. What? Why? Hold on, all of a sudden? I can't keep someone in this house who, on a whim, endangers another's life and then forgets all about it and merrily goes about playing. Get out now. But enough. You think you have the right to talk back? You really don't think of anyone but yourself. Jenna tried to persuade Robert, but he brushed her off. And to top it all off, she turned to me. Sophia, please say something. No, it's no use. Just leave as Robert said. Could you stop clinging to me just because Robert's angry? Just as he said, you really only think about yourself. Hearing my words, Jenna hung her head. With a resigned look, she dragged her suitcase and left the house. Her figure seemed lonely, but oddly enough, I didn't feel sorry for her at all. After that, I received a ton of emails and calls from Jenna. She sent me messages like I'm sorry and please forgive me. Looking at the volume and timing of those emails and calls, she would send a bunch all at once or send them regardless of day or night. It really showed her self-centered side. She also sent updates about where she has been living and how she has been getting by. Apparently, she has been living in one of those dirt-cheap motels while working. I thought she could just stay at a hotel or rent an apartment, but she seems to be picky about having separate bathrooms, wanting a clean place, and so on. She is having a hard time settling on a place, and even if she finds a good one, the rent is too high for her. She sent the exact same messages to Robert, who was stunned. He said, either she really can't manage on her own or she's just too selfish. But honestly, no matter the situation, I would never let Jenna back into this house. I really wish she would take a moment on her own to reflect on her actions. After Jenna left, our lives returned to peace. Robert still travels for work, but not as much as before, so we have more time to relax together. I don't have to be as careful around each other, and it's nice to relax. Jenna never listened, no matter how many times we warned her. So in a way, I'm glad things turned out this way. All in all, every day spent with Robert is pure joy. After finishing the housework and relaxing on the sofa, Oliver climbed onto my belly. He meowed and curled up to sleep. I hope for many more moments like this. As I petted Oliver, I found myself lost in such thoughts.